I'm doing a collaboration with Aaron from the 6061 channel, and together we're building the F-bomb. Rest assured, F stands for fake, since this bomb is not going to hurt anybody. We're just riffing on a term you've all heard as we demonstrate some intricate fabrication. Aaron is one of the most amazing welders you'll see on YouTube, and his videos are packed with fabrication techniques you won't find anywhere else. He's got quite a sense of humor too, as you'll see in his videos. I'm going to make the fuselage, then I'll ship it to Aaron, and he'll make the tail and wrap up this project as he sees fit. In part 1, I made the wooden buck, or form, and in this video, I'll shape the metal for the rear portions, carefully forming each piece to match the buck. I'm going to work on the sheet metal that goes from this station to this station, and what's unique about that is it's a straight line from here to here. So this is a cone. It has no compound curves at all. So I'm going to make a bending fixture to allow me to roll sheet metal into a cone that matches this. So I need to start with some accurate dimensions. I'm going to measure the width of the station at this point, and that measures 10 7/8 inches. The dimension at this point, at the very tip, is 4 7/8, and the dimension between those 2 points is 9 7/8 inches. So I'm going to show you how I'll create the bending fixture that will allow us to make a cone that matches these dimensions pretty accurately. I know that when I bend a piece of metal over a form, it's going to spring back a little bit. I'll show you what I mean. So I'm bending this tight against the form, but when I take the pressure off it, it has a completely different radius. So I'm going to do a test here to find out precisely how much it springs back. I'm going to sand a disc to be exactly 6 inches in diameter. Now I'll bend a strip of metal over this form and see what the result is. So here's the strip of metal I'll use from the test bend. I'm going to put this in from the back side, and you'll see why in just a second. We'll get this clamped into place, and then I'm going to make this bend as far around my bending form as I can. Looks like that's about it. So I'll unclamp this, take it out, and then I'll put it in the other direction. Get this clamped into place. Now one thing I have to do is to cut off the flat. I need to have a flat on this end, otherwise I couldn't make the bend, but that's just going to get in the way after this point. So I'm cutting the flat section off. Then I'll make this bend as far as I can. I'm going to have to slide this around a little more to bend it all the way. Let's see if that'll do it. So again, this end is getting in the way, so I think I'll trim the flat off that end. So this strip is longer than I need, but it's still going to give us the information we're seeking. So I'll put this back in the fixture. Okay, I think we're just about there now. So when I bend a strip over a 6-inch form, it springs back to give me a circle 8 3/4 in diameter. So in knowing those dimensions, I can calculate the percentage of spring back, so I'll know how to build the form to make my cone. The test pieces I did have shown me what size discs I need to make for my forming fixture. So my goal is to have a 10 7/8 inch diameter on the cone at the big end. It springs back about 1.4 times, so this disc is 7 3/4 inches. On the smaller end, I decided to make it 3.5 inches, so it'll spring back to 4 7/8. And both of these discs were cut to the correct angle. I used my little sanding fixture to make them pretty accurate in that way. So I also need to hold these together the right distance apart and in the proper orientation. So I've made kind of a strong back that they attach to. So this disc goes on the back, this disc goes on the front, and I've used screws to hold all these together. So there's our bending fixture, and I've designed this so it can clamp to the edge of a plate that hangs off the edge of my table. You'll see why I need the clearance below the table pretty quickly. And this hole is to accommodate the end of a C-clamp, and on this end I can just put the clamp on the top of this flat spot. So this is how it's going to fit on my table. I'll put one clamp on this end and the other clamp on this end. So now I have full access for bending around this fixture. I'm going to use the rollation technique to make the pattern for the cone shape. So I've drawn a center line on my buck that's opposite one of the stations. I'm going to align this center line of my buck on a center line I've drawn on my pattern paper. And then I'm going to roll this over to one side until this station touches the paper. And I'll make a mark there. So this will be one edge of my pattern. Then I'm going to roll this toward the center, marking the bottom edge on my pattern paper. We're right to the center now. Now we're rolling along to the other side. And we're going to keep going until this station just touches the paper again. And make a mark there. And then rolling back toward the center, I'll start marking the top end of the cone. So there's the basic layout for our cone pattern. I'm going to add a little extra material to this. I want to have about a 3/4 inch border on both the bottom end and the top end, just to give me some wiggle room when it comes time to fit these together. And I need to have a little extra material on both sides so I can align it with the clamping fixture. So to make a 3/4 inch border on the bottom and the top, I'll use 2 rows of 3/8 inch masking tape. I'm using thinner tape because it can make tight turns more easily. So we'll lay down one line of tape right here, just touching the pencil line that I made. I'll put a second piece of tape right next to that. So there's our 3/4 inch border on the bottom. Now I'll use the same technique to put a 3/4 inch border on the top. So far so good. When it comes time to bend the blank over the form, I can't have the edge of the blank right on the center line of the form. I need to have a little bit of overhang to get some leverage to do the bending. So I'm going to add 1 inch onto the line I've made, and that should give me sufficient leverage. So I'll use 1 inch masking tape to lay that out. And now I'm ready to cut out the pattern for the blank. So the blank is cut to size and I'm ready to bend it. I'm going to start by aligning the center of my blank with the center of the bending fixture. Okay, so everything's clamped into place. I'm going to bend up each side to about 45 degrees. So that's as far as I need to go with the first step. Now I'll release this and reclamp it. And this time I'll clamp starting on this edge. So I have the edge of my bending fixture flush with the edge of the plate, and I have the edge of the part flush with the edge of the bending fixture. So everything should be in the proper alignment. Now we're going to make a new bend, and it should tie in perfectly with the previous bend we made. And you see now why I'm working over a plate, because I need space underneath this for the metal to go. So far so good. Now I'll switch everything around and bend the other side. Again, I'm getting everything flush with the edge of the table, both the bending fixture and the blank. You know, there's something I forgot to do. I need to make a cut line on the flat portion here. I already scribed a line showing me where to trim this edge. Okay, so let's finish this bend now. I'll pull the metal toward me, making sure I have full contact with the bending fixture. So our bending is complete. Let's pull this off and try it on the buck. So everything seems to be fitting very snugly. I'll scribe on the overlapped area. Now I'll trim on this line and check the fit one more time. I've completed the fitting and adjusting, and this joint is fitting perfectly. And you can see it's fitting the buck very nicely as well. So I'm going to pull this off the buck now, and we can weld this joint. Now I'll put some tack welds on this. I'll try this on the buck now just to make sure there's no problems. Everything looks great. It's fitting the buck perfectly. So I can go ahead and finish weld this now. And on a joint like this that I'm going to work, I always like to make another pass on the inside to fuse together the weld. The first step in finishing the weld is to sand it down flush with the metal next to it. So I'll get this stabilized on the fixture. Then I'll use a sander to trim it down flush. So I'll use a very low crown hammer and dolly to crush this weld flat. I think that should do it. So looking on the inside, you can see that weld has been crushed completely flat. It's just about invisible. And looking on the outside, you can see it's very, very smooth, but I'll do a little filing on this side to make it absolutely perfect. So I'll be using a small Vixen file, and I'll just run it lightly over this surface. So the file only touches the high spots, and anything that was not touched by the file is just a little bit low. So I'm going to start working the low spots up, and I'll do that with a bullseye pick. And this is really a simple device. It's two hinged arms. When I squeeze the handle, this lower arm comes up, and it taps the metal right in the center of this sort of gun sight arrangement. So I just put the gun sight over any spot that appears to be too low, squeeze the handle, and it very easily and accurately raises any low spots. And now I can file it again. Now I think you'll see that each of these low spots is going to reduce in size quite a bit. So I still have some low spots, but most of them are about half the size of what they were. So I'll repeat this process again. And I'll file one more time. So as you can see, that's really done a fine job of smoothing this surface. And now I'll sand this to get the file marks out of it. So smoothing a weld in this way, you can't even see where the weld is. It's a lovely way to finish metal. I made this cone slightly taller than it needs to be, and now I'm going to trim it down to be flush with the edges of the stations. So I'll just get inside with a scriber and trace right alongside those circular stations, make a mark. And now I can trim on this mark. So I have a nice flat surface now, and it should fit that buck perfectly. Now I'll trim the top end in the same way. I'll start working on this portion of the buck now. I'm going to shape this ring in 3 pieces. So I need to make a pattern that goes from this station around to this station, and from this station up to this station. So I'll use paper to make a pattern. I've cut a piece of paper slightly oversized. I'll get this positioned so it's sort of centered on the buck. And I'll fasten it with one push pin near the front, one push pin near the back, and then one on each side. So the pattern paper is held pretty snugly against the buck, and I need to mark the edges of the buck on the paper. And there's many ways to do that. Sometimes I use what I call the dirty finger technique. I simply rub my finger against the paper, and it leaves a mark that's pretty easy to see. But it's hard for the video camera to pick that up. So today I'm going to be using a pencil, and I've centered the tip of this down smooth so there's lead exposed on a large portion. Then I can just rub the tip of this pencil right on the edge of the buck, and it leaves a line that is real easy to see. So I'll pull this off, and you can see how crisp the line is that's left by the pencil. I want to add a little extra material around the edges of my pattern to give myself some wiggle room, and I'll use masking tape to move the edges out. I'm using 3/8 inch tape here. So I'll trim on the tape line. So here's our finished pattern. Now all three of the pieces I'll be making are identical, so I'll use this pattern to cut out 3 pieces of metal. I'm going to start shaping the metal in the simplest way. I'll be using a hammer with a dome face, working against a flat plate of steel. And I've made a little template here that shows me the contour the part needs to have. And I need to make sure that I choose a hammer that has at least as much curvature as the template does. So let's get started. I just need to start hammering in this area, and the more I hammer, the more it will dome. So I'll check my progress. We certainly are getting doming in both directions. Quite a bit of curvature across the side of the part, and a little bit of curvature from front to back. Let's try this into place on the buck, and it's certainly moving in the right direction. We just need more of what we've done. So I'll continue hammering. So let's check our progress one more time. Looks like I actually have a little bit more curvature in the part than I need, in the front at least. So I'm going to take some of that out. So that's a little bit better. Fit in the back looks pretty darn close. And let's check the contour from front to back now. We have more than half of what we need, but it still does need more curvature. You can see there's about an 1/8 of an inch gap here. So we'll just do more of the same. Let's check our work again. Again, a little bit too much contour near the front edge. That's looking better. A little bit more contour than I need on the back edge, so I'll open that up. Okay, and let's check it with our template. You know, we're just about there on this portion of it. Very, very close. Now this is not as smooth as I'll get it, but I'm going for the depth first. I'm going to switch this around now and start working from the other side. So I put a bit more time into shaping this, but the fit's coming along very, very well. You can see we have a nice fit at the back edge. You can see we have a nice fit at the front edge. And let me show you how the contour template fits. It's very, very close. It's within about 30 or 40 thousandths of an inch. It's within about 1 millimeter. So that's probably as far as I need to go with this technique. And I'll show you another technique to develop the final fit and finish on this. I'll be using a slap hammer for the final smoothing, and the advantage this has over a traditional hammer is it's a lower crown, which gives it a bigger footprint, so it contacts more metal with each hit and makes it easier to smooth it out. I'm going to be working against a dolly with a low crown face, and I need to elevate this so I can get to the ends of my part. So I'll use a sandbag to balance the dolly on, and I put a block of wood on my table to drape the sandbag over, which elevates the dolly. And now I can cover this entire surface with a series of hits to smooth it out. So I've just worked one small corner of this, but already you can see how much it smoothed out the finish. So after a little more time hammering, I've actually gotten this to fit the buck very, very well. You can see we have a nice tight fit against the back station and a nice snug fit against the front station. And this contour template I've made fits very, very well everywhere across the perimeter. So this part is essentially done. Let's move on now to the next section, and I'll form it in a different way. The planishing hammer is another good option for shaping this panel. I put a 12-inch radius die in the bottom of the machine, and we'll start shaping another blank piece of metal. So let's check our progress. You can see it's no longer flat, and this small area that I've worked is starting to develop some contour. Certainly we'll need more contour this way, and it needs more contour in the other direction as well, but we're certainly getting there. So all it takes is more time in this machine, and we'll gradually bring up the shape we want. So I've spent about 20 minutes shaping this part, and you can see it has a lot of dome in it, but when we compare it to the buck, you can see it still has a long way to go. And when we check our contour template, it has more to go in that direction too. So it's shaping very smoothly. I'm pleased with that. I just need to spend more time in this machine. Okay, let's try it on the buck now. And we've got a pretty decent fit. I'm going to tighten up the contour in the back a little bit. That looks pretty good. And the contour in the front, as you can see, is pretty good. Maybe it needs a little more bend right here. So it's matching these stations quite well. And let's check it with our template. And I have an excellent match here, excellent here, excellent here, and an excellent fit here as well. So there's 2 down and 1 left to go. And I'll shape the last piece a different way. I'll use a benchtop English wheel to form the last piece. So the lower wheels on these machines are replaceable, and I've installed the 12-inch radius wheel, which is the one that matches this contour. And I've adjusted this with the wheel so that there's medium to medium-high pressure on the panel. So let's start shaping this. I'll spin the wheels to get the metal between them, and just start moving the metal back and forth, and you'll see pretty quickly what happens. So I'm moving the metal right to left a little bit as I wheel back and forth. And I'll pull this out in just a minute so you can see what the results are. So you can see I've domed it some. Let me get a flat surface here. So in about 1 minute's time, I've domed it about 3/16 of an inch. So it's certainly moving in the right direction, and it's moving with good control, but I have a lot farther to go. So I'll just keep wheeling. You can see how much the shape is developing on this. I'm well into it, but the other side of it is I have a long way to go. But all it takes is more time. I'm very pleased with the smoothness of the surface I'm getting, and the depth is developing more and more as I continue to wheel. Okay, I think I've got the shape dialed in pretty well. Let's try it one more time. Looks like the contour on the front is spot on. Looks like the contour on the back is just about perfect. And let's test the contour front to back with our template. I'd say we're right there. So we've shaped 3 different pieces, 3 different ways. I actually have my preferences. This is the machine I like the best, and one of the reasons is it's quiet. I don't happen to like noise very much. That's going to wrap it up for this time, and in the next video, I'll start joining some of these pieces together. If you enjoy my videos, please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when I post a new project. If you like, you can support these videos through Patreon. Just click the link at the end of the video. I'll see you next time.